Hello. Good evening. Good evening. How are y'all doing? All right. Mm, I don't know why it's doing that. But I am hoping it is live because the last time I went live across multiple platforms, it did not go. But we are going to dive in a minute. We are going to dive in a minute. Alrighty. Hello, good evening. I hope you all are doing well. I want to come to you all for a few minutes and talk about why mental health professionals undercharge for their speaking services. Hey, I'm Dr. Dominique Pritchett, and I partner with organizations around the world to evolve mental capacity within themselves and their teams so they are not falling apart behind the scenes and definitely before a crisis. So let's get the tea on speaking. Mental health professional. I do not believe the problem is you charging your therapy rates for speaking. I truly believe the problem is that your therapy rate was never the right number to begin with. I know this is a hot topic across the board. What do you charge? You're charging too much. You're not charging enough. Why are you giving away stuff for free? People don't respect what we charge. So if a clinician charging $175 for a therapy session, let's say they speak to 300 people, you just literally delivered a 52,500 worth of individual impact, if we were to identify it like that, within 1 hour. So why in the world would your invoice say you only charge $500? Why in the world would that say that? Let me set the scenario. Mental health professionals, you absolutely can charge your rate for a 1 hour talk between whatever number you set it to be. I was recently responding to someone in one of the mental health groups, and he asked a question. Hey, I have this hour talk coming up. What can I charge? And a bunch of people started saying, "Oh, just charge your per hour rate." Some people said just double your per hour rate. Then some people said just triple your per hour therapy rate. And I said, get the intel. What is the intel you have that is driving what you are asking to be paid? Get the intel, and that intel can include, of course, what type of organization structure it is. Some people get into the bells and whistles of, oh, how many people are going to be there. I don't really focus on that. I just don't. Some intel you might want to get is, oh, what is the investment or budget you have reserved? All the things you would need to make an informed decision. And so that's what I told them. And I said, well, I don't know much about your opportunity, but I would charge between 8,500 to 10,500. And I got a response. I imagine this isn't going to be the only response. There's no friction with me and that person. I don't even know the person. But they said, that seems insanely high for an hour talk. And then they wished me well and said, if you can get this, that's awesome. Yes, it's doable. And yes, it's realistic. Last week, I presented a 5-day series called Amplify Your Voice Spring into Speaking. And the last day was an upgrade option. And that option was called, or that course was called Recession Proof Your Expertise. And so when people say, well, no one is ever going to pay you that rate, they absolutely will. But we just don't come out the back saying, I want it to be charged this much. There's some sales psychology that goes into it. There is some data collection that goes into it. There are a lot of things that go into why would you actually charge that and who would be investing in you. When I'm working with mental health professionals, my goal is to help you understand how to turn your thought leadership into transformational speaking services that organizations want to fund so you can make more impact, more income, and more independence. Okay. So to that person who responded, that's insanely high. I can understand where they're coming from. Then I responded with 3 questions, and one of them being, what's coming up for you that you believe this is impossible? So, therapists, I want to invite you to get out of the per hour therapy rate box, the limited mindset box, and the fear of the outcome box if you went bigger. I do believe that there are 3 reasons that this shock comes up for therapists. One is the imposter schema, not the syndrome aspect of it. The schema part. So this is when there is a cognitive roadblock that runs so deep, deeper than self-doubt. It's like underneath there, where clinicians are trained to locate or showcase their expertise and credentials, case numbers, billable hours, all the things that make us therapists or mental health professionals. A speaking platform feels unearned by those standards. So our brain starts forming these thoughts as, well, I got to perform rather than what is the practice that I need to do? What do I need to continuously practice and repeat and keep doing in order to set my rates where I desire to set them based on what every other therapist is doing? Okay. So this triggers a default to low stake pricing as a form of self protection. Okay. There's a part in you saying, I got to protect you. So just go low. And so for mental health professionals, they feel like we feel like we don't do enough to charge what the market would actually pay and what many budgets have reserved for you. That's my first belief. Okay. My second belief, or the reason that mental health professionals undermine or undercharge, is the helper role, the unconscious guilt around being compensated for being a helper for our most vulnerable communities. Okay, so mental health professionals are conditioned to center access and equity. Those are great things. However, or I should say, and that value it's real and important, and when it is unexamined of how that's showing up for us, it starts producing psychological patterns where charging market rates, you have to determine what those are, where it feels selfish, it feels exclusionary. So the guilt is not irrational guilt. It's a trained response that I had to struggle with for years. Okay. And I know many of my coaching clients, they're trying to break through and they're just like, I'm so conditioned that way. They have unconsciously conflated the ethics police of their clinical practice, and they've confused it with the economics of business development. Those are not at the same space and they're not at the same pace. That doesn't mean you do anything unethical, but talking about and asking for lucrative amounts of money for organizations that budgeted for you to come in there, but you don't have that intel to know that, there's nothing unethical about that. It might be uncomfortable, but not unethical. And so the third reason I believe this happens for mental health professionals is our brain, or excuse me, I'm going to name it. So if you're taking notes, you can list it. The third reason is that our fee is anchoring to the wrong reference point. Our brain anchors to new decisions to familiar numbers. If it's 150 or 200, what is that when it comes to the speaking world? So if you've been charging 150, 200, that's what you've charged for years in your therapy practice, that becomes the floor your nervous system recognizes as real money. If I get this per hour and I multiply that by 15 or 30, that's what I am bringing in. I feel that. There's no judgment. So when speaking fees of 2,500 or 7,500, 8,500, 10,500, 15K feel so abstract, it's almost like it's fake, like it's fictional, like that is, no one will pay you that. I will never speak on anything I haven't earned, and I have witnessed many of my coaching clients who are mental health therapists and professionals that they've earned as well. Okay. And so it becomes so foreign because there's no reference point. There's no prior experiential reference. We call this classic anchoring bias. Without new data and the exposure to what's possible, you'll never have an understanding of what the market will actually pay. And so that anchor within you never, ever move. I also want to give you some strategies. So, those are three things of why I believe it's happening with mental health professionals. But the strategy here is one, audit your own math, not just your hours. The amazing thing about speaking is we don't have to speak for hours to make what we will likely have made in a month. So when you start pricing per hour and per head and all the per versus per project or per event, so you can take your therapy session rate and multiply it by the room, then add the downstream value, then all of these bells and whistles, it just builds and builds and builds. And at the end of the day, like, is it really worth your time? It's really worth your time. So that's why you have to have some insight into auditing your own math. What do those numbers look like for you? At the end of the day, it's for what shifts in that room because you're in it. What are the transformations you offer because you're in it? Add some numbers to that. Write that number down. Put it somewhere visible where you see it every day. Put it right in front of you when you're negotiating numbers. Start bringing it up in the circles that you frequent. Make it real. So, the second strategy I will talk about is build a comparison set inside of the right industry. So, if you are not pricing against you are not pricing against other therapists, you're pricing against speakers across industries. And somehow we believe that, oh, because we're therapists, we got to price lower. When I think about consultants, organizational professionals, executive coaches, keynote speakers, they're charging by the project. Okay. So I encourage you to start building a comparison inside of the industry that one, you're probably afraid to step in, which is speaking, but you desire to become very comfortable and familiar with. You cannot charge, or you might have a really hard time wrapping your mind around charging what you have never seen someone else charge or been in spaces where people talked about those kinds of dollars. So the anger has to move. The third strategy I want to give you is create some distance between your clinical identity and your speaker identity. That doesn't mean they peel apart or they are severed. It just means, as a therapist, your licensure informs your content, your offers, all the things you offer in therapy practice. It does not set your prices as a speaker. Those are two separate business entities, two separate pricing structures, two separate contracts. Now you can use your clinical experience, skills, and gifts to to facilitate or be a conduit for what you speak on, the transformation you create. Yeah, absolutely. But when you start conflating and confusing them, you start discounting yourself by default because that clinical frame carries that social, that ethical expectation than the speaker frame. Okay, that frame of reference. So the moment you build a speaker one sheet that has nothing to do with your clinical hours, the moment you start talking about how else you can help people transform through your clinical and practical lens, something starts shifting. You start seeing yourself as a professional in two industries, not one that has to sacrifice for the other. This is exactly why I created the Amplify and Ascend Accelerator. This is my 90-day group coaching program for mental health professionals. My coaching style and my program is not to convince people that they are in demand or people want to fund them and their services, but to unpack strategies, solutions, support you'll get, and keeping it super simple. But you got to do the work. We are still accepting applications as of today for the next 7 days. So I want to close with this. The organizations booking you do have budget lines for their speakers, and they are completely separate than the mental health programming budgets, like EAPs and all of that. They're separate. So they're not asking you to speak because you're a therapist. All they know you're a therapist, but that's not like they're like, come and talk as a therapist if it's not a therapeutic environment. They're asking you to speak because you know something that they need. They believe you can help move their people from A to Z. They believe you can deliver it in a way that no one else can. And so I need you to price that accordingly. Peace, y'all.